My guest has dedicated his life to the idea that art can be a bridge between cultures. He is internationally known as a theater director for his adaptations of Japanese Kabuki plays for Western audiences. He's the author of books on Japanese brush painting, flower arranging, and the tea ceremony. For his work spreading Japanese culture to the West, the Emperor of Japan awarded him the Order of the Sacred Treasure in 2004. He first came to Urbana-Champaign in 1964 as an artist in residence. There was so much demand for his teaching and demonstrations that after a few years he became a professor of art and design at the University of Illinois. He also created the original Japan House, a center for Japanese culture on the U of I campus. He retired in 1992 and now makes his home in California, but returns for regular visits to Urbana, and we're happy that this time he could visit with us. I am very pleased to welcome two Illinois pioneers, Shozo Sato.
Konnichiwa.
Thank you very much for being with us.
This is a great honor to be back in this campus and in this TV program.
Well, we're very, very pleased that you could be here. I'd like to start out by talking a bit about your early life in Japan. You were born in 1933, and so you grew up during the war years.
Yes.
And would have witnessed firsthand the destruction and the devastation of the war. It seems that for you, art offered a way out of all of that. Is that right?
Yes. And therefore, I would like to, because of my personal interest from childhood is all about arts, performing art to the visual arts. And of course, much later in my youth, late teen age, I become aware the art is direct voice of people of that culture. Mm-hmm. And so if we can communicate with another nation and people of the nation through art, we have a better understanding of each other. Mm. Then we can avoid another unnecessary war. Mm. And that was my understanding. And thus I start studying Japanese traditional art seriously, though at that time I was student of oil painting in Western style.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you've talked about the fact that at the end of the war, many people in Japan were looking outward.
Yes.
They were interested in the West and in Western arts. And you talked about the fact that all young people in Japan, they wanted to go to the United States.
Exactly.
And they were really turning away from traditional Japanese arts.
That was very true. And many of my colleagues at the University of Fine Art speak of Paris and New York, and then they know all about famous Western artists, history, personality, etc. But they don't know anything about tradition of Japanese culture and art because their eyes are going out to the West. Mm-hmm. And even when I was studying oil paintings or such, that many of my colleagues said, you have to keep going on studying Western art. If you keep going back to traditional Japanese art, you are old hat. Have to be on time of the movement of the culture. Mm. And so I was seriously studying Western art, and both performing art and visual art. And much as I studied, then I become aware of a big question mark. In Japanese art and performing art, we honor a certain element, but in the West, that's to be the weak spot. Hmm. So that difference between, such as that in Japanese painting, or even Chinese or Korean paintings, active empty space or active silence is a very, very important element in composition. But in the West, if you have a canvas unpainted, having a raw canvas is no good. You have to cover entire canvas.
Yeah. And this is something you can see very dramatically in traditional ink painting because you have white paper, you have black ink.
Exactly.
And there can, in fact, be a lot of white space in the picture.
Yes. So trying to bring in the viewer's thoughts into the white space to become one with creator and then viewer. And that is the strength of Asian culture. I'm saying Asian culture because I am Japanese background, therefore I cannot do Korean or Chinese arts well. And so I do Japanese art, but this is an example of Asian art because we all share the basic principles such as Buddhism or Chinese ideograms to write. And rice culture, we eat all rice, and all the lifestyle is very similar. So I'm using Japanese culture as example of Asian culture in this campus to introduce what is Asian minds and how they think and how they create and how they express.
Just to pick up on one thing that you said, because I'm certainly, I think it's true that most, if not all, artists are interested in provoking some kind of reaction from the person that's viewing the art. And the question is, well, what? What sort of reaction are you trying to provoke? And I think it's very important that one of the things perhaps that distinguishes the Japanese approach to drama or to painting or to sculpture or to architecture or anything else is the response that you're trying to draw from the viewer. So what would that be, and how might that be different from a Western artist?
For ballet, for example, or even in literature, or even architectures, the Western concept is when you give in space or time, how well you can fill it up, make it rich as possible in that space or time. On the other hand, especially Japanese aesthetics based on Zen philosophy, how well you can eliminate unnecessary element to making that creation pure as possible in minimum and crystallization of a beauty of nature, but in minimum. And then having a lot of empty space, silence even in the music. So the listener or viewer have to come forward, what's going on now? And then bringing forward into your own world is much more stronger than here I am, take as I am now, 100%.
When we talked last time we talked, it was many years, and I listened again to the interview we did, and one of the things that we talked about was a little bit was flower arranging, which is an Ikebana, which is something that you're very much accomplished in and interested in. And I asked you about there's a particular style that's very simple. That's the nagairi. It's thrown in style. That's what it means, literally thrown in, which kind of means in a very direct and simple and quick way. You might select one container, one flower, very quickly trim it maybe a little bit, put it in, you're done. And I thought that this tells you a lot, I think, about a Japanese aesthetic. And you explained that because I said something like, well, I can take one flower and put it in a container, but there's something more to it than that. What is the essence of that most simple approach to displaying a flower?
Training and discipline to be able to judge given subject and its beauty and character in matter of a second, to be able to judge, and then how to make it alive. And sounds simple, but it takes long years of training in your eyes and in your senses.
You, I think from the point that you were really quite young, were very interested in art, in theater, in doing your own plays. I think that your mother actually took you to Kabuki, to the
theater.
But your dad didn't
No.
Did not appreciate
No.
this.
He was a medical doctor, and he was running a hospital. So he was hoping that I will become his successor. And yet when he come back home and see me wearing mother's kimono and dancing around like a kabuki, pretend to be kabuki actor, that's obviously very disturbing for my father.
There is this story that he said, well, but you can't go out and go play with the other guys. Go out there and roll around and fight with the other boys.
Yes.
And so
you remember that.
one time you actually did this. How did that turn out?
Well, so I said, I can beat up friends. So I went and then beat up one of my friends. And then my friend's parent come to our house and then bitterly complaining my violence to the student, the child of theirs. And from that point on, my father will not encourage me to go out and fight with others.
So was your mother, do you think, particularly important in getting you interested in arts?
Yes, she have great interest and an influence over me in performing art. But the interesting enough that I did not meet my grandfather, but grandfather was known tea master. And actually he passed away through cancer and having very, very strong tea first thing in the morning. That's very bad for stomach. So that's how he did all his life. And tea ceremony is total art in a sense. From Japanese point of view, you have to have knowledge and training of architectural aspect, landscape design, and utensils, ceramics, and ironwares, and lacquerware, bamboo-ware, all these things, as well as mannerism, and all this have to be mastered to become tea master. And that's really, I thought, a wonderful way to introduce Japanese way of life to this community. And that's the reason we created tea ceremony classes as well as the Japan House, where we can have authentic atmosphere. And so studying East and West, then sifting out what would be most effective subject to introduce Japanese culture and art, as an example of Asian culture and art, was a tea ceremony.
You were, and again, I think maybe it was because your mom had taken you to the theater, had this very early interest in Kabuki. You were also interested in painting and had studied painting. You did, I think, attend the Toho Academy of Performing Arts, which is a place where people go who want to be actors.
Yes.
And did you then go on and do some film and television acting?
Yes, I did. And after my fine arts school, because I don't want to become office worker or factory worker or government official of that category, and I want to be artist. Since my life in the age of 4 years old on, I know what I want to do for my life, arts. So to find which form of art, performing art, Western or Japanese, painting, Western, Japanese, all the aspects. And even I went to school of opera, vocal, and then I sang quite a few times. And I find out after the fine art college, enter into this performing arts school as a second year program. Of course, I had a great benefit to know all about Eastern art and performing art, Western performing art, the difference and the histories. And there I met a classmate, happened to be the nephew of my eventually become teacher, the famous living national treasure of Kabuki, Nakamura Kanzaburo the 17th. His nephew was in classmate. And so we get to know each other. And he took me to Kanzaburo sensei's dressing room. And of course, he have a grand dressing room with traditional Tokonova archive of wall hangings and such. And there was no flower arrangement. So at that time, age 19, I was already teaching flower arrangement. And so I will come to arrange flower for you every week. And he was very delighted. And this gave me a free pass to go into Kabuki theater from back door.
This is it's interesting in Japan, artists and musicians and painters and actors take on pupils that then carry on their tradition.
Yeah.
Sometimes they actually, at least in Kabuki, they actually take on their name.
Yes, exactly.
So that's how it is. You can have Nakamura Kenzaburo the 17th, and his son was Nakamura Kenzaburo the 18th,
yes.
and so on. Did you ever think that you actually could go into Kabuki and do that professionally?
First, when I was younger, that was my dream. But much as I get to know my teachers, and then behind the scene of personal conduct, of production system, etc., I was glad I did not become Kabuki actor. First, you have to be born to be the Kabuki actors' families of high rank. Otherwise, you cannot play the major part. That very much strong traditions. And if you happen to be born on the third class Kabuki actor, you cannot go beyond. And that's when my teacher adopted me and gave me the family name of Nakamura Kanzo the Fourth. This was a producing and choreography as a choreographer. And the last person, the third, was 1800. And from there, the space, but the name was open, so I took up that fourth. And in this way, the world of Kabuki is beautiful. Well, I guess it's any world in fine art as well. The human relationship, and then how well you want to become above of other colleague, and that struggle was very, very, very dark side of human life.
So that kind of hierarchical sense, competition for position was something that you just didn't sit with you.
No.
But you did apparently think that Kabuki perhaps would again be a good way by taking Kabuki to people outside of Japan might be a good way to
Exactly. Yeah. When I came here, and of course Kurano Center was not there yet, and the biggest theater was Lincoln Hall, and that was the biggest place. And so I did have a Kabuki solo dance concert in Lincoln Hall and such. But until then, I was teaching through School of Art and Design, and limited number of students, studio works up to the 15 students, and that was great. But I would like to reach out more to the general public. And for that reason, almost every weekend, I was invited by the different civic organizations surrounding Champaign-Urbana and going out to the church or women's club, etc., to introduce Japanese art and culture. But here, Kurano Center opens, and then I was luckily appointed as the first generation of artists in residence for the Kurano Center. And the dean at that time, Jack Mackenzie, said, "Shozo, why don't you start teaching and producing Kabuki? We haven't seen none of a play. I've seen the dance you did, but not play itself." So this opened up new page in my activity at Champaign-Urbana life. And because theater is mass communication, So 15 students each semester, or 100 or 1,000 audience in one performance is much more effective from my point of view. So not only performing the student Kabuki play, but I came out and explained the basic meaning of Kabuki theater, why they chant, and how they stylize style of movement done. I demonstrated so audience will have a better understanding of what they're going to see next.
Well, we're coming near the end of their time. There's so much more I would like to talk about. I would just for a moment like to go back right to the moment when you came to the campus, and I know that you had a school in Japan where you taught traditional Japanese arts, and someone who happened to be a professor here was there at the school and said to you, what would you think about coming and being artist in residence? And I think because as we had talked, you said, well, young people in Japan, they wanted to go to the United States. So you said yes, and you came. But it must have been strange because at that time, I can't imagine there were very many Asian people on this campus, actually.
In fact, during 1964, there was quite few science Japanese faculty and then his family. But I was the first one in humanity programs as a Japanese. And so I walk campus, or especially slightly off the campus. And then I had to pump gas for my car. And then people, Oriental walking. They're pointed, even in Green Street, I remember.
Seriously, as if you were visiting from some other planet.
Yeah, so I said, Oriental don't fly, we walk too. That's what I would keep saying. And so that's why I thought we have to reach out to the general public to inform about Asian culture. And that's the reason we created original Japan House.
So when you sit down with your brush, you're going to do calligraphy or going to paint, or maybe you're thinking about doing a flower arrangement or anything else, is that a spiritual exercise for you?
Yes. While you are arranging flower, you think it's a beautiful line of branches, beautiful color and form of flowers, and how you combining, and then think of active empty space and this mass color combination. What are you thinking of creating something beautiful? You do not think any evil thoughts, any basic desires or any of that, just pure creativeness. And that's the way of art is the way of Buddha. That's the way I often explain. If you concentrated on creative activities, 100% put yourself in, and then you are Buddha at that moment. Because in this case, Buddha means total purity of your soul.
I started out talking about the fact that you'd really had this lifelong goal to use art to promote greater understanding across cultures, and that you had hoped that you could communicate to people outside of Japan what the essence of Japan and Japanese culture was, and that you have a strong feeling that's really a part of your personal identity.
Yes.
So is there one particular thing that you would say you would hope that people would come to understand about Japan as a result of anything that you might have taught in the line of traditional Japanese arts?
Well, only thing I can say is that Japanese as a nation, a lot of people, and that people are basically same as America or France or Germany. People are people. But core of group in the society go beyond the ordinary with this Zen philosophical understanding of how to concentrate, go beyond the ordinary. This concentration, self-discipline, And I think this is the one, it's something unique to the world culture, I think. And that's why many of the industrial as well as the fine art, the unique creativity come from Japan because of this Zen way of self-discipline.
I'm afraid that's where we'll have to stop. Thank you so very much.
どうもありがとうございました. This was a great honor. Thank you.
And to you all who are watching, thank you. And we hope that you will join us again next time for another edition of Illinois Pioneers.